The library was located on the eastern edge of the Tios. It was a large white building with carvings all the way up to the roof. It extended all the way down to the bottom floor, so far down that it was impossible to see through to the lowest floor. Furthermore, there are thousands of similar buildings lined up in every direction, so far that it was impossible to see. Although not as tall as the building in front, each building stretches so far down that it is impossible to see all the way to the bottom. Every few floors of each building there were crystal bridges that allowed people to travel between the buildings. The lake that surrounds the city is divided just before the library and is separated all the way to the bottom by a crystal wall. Pharos stopped dead in his tracks as he reached the large bridge that connected the building in front of him. The unimaginable sight left him speechless. Claire looked satisfied as she saw Pharos and asked, "You were surprised, weren't you?" Pharos remained silent the whole time, as if he hadn't heard Claire's words. The interior of the building was bright and spacious. The walls are entirely made of glass, and the four corners are supported by thick, round pillars. The white pillars were intricately carved, just like the exterior walls of the building. In the center of the room was a space separated by a counter, behind which several women were checking in visitors. Behind them, a man was holding a thin stick and staring intently at the desk. The man had a long, snow-white beard that reached down to his desk, and looked quite old, a rare look in the underground world. There were several tables set up by the window behind the counter, and some of the seats were taken. Many visitors were lined up in 3 rows in front of the reception counter. Pharos and his party lined up at the back of the middle row, with Claire at the front. "That's Grandpa, Ramza, the director of the library," Claire said, pointing at the elderly man sitting behind the counter. "But first, we have to check in," Claire said, shrugging. Pharos looked at the man at the front of the line going through the procedure. The man placed his hand on a square crystal plate set up on the counter. Then, after the receptionist handed him a stick, the man left the counter and moved towards the pillar in the corner. Then he stopped in front of a pillar and went inside the entrance that appeared there. The pillar is apparently similar to the glass tunnel that were in Cortania. It would be used to move floors. The reception went smoothly, and the Pharos turn came quickly. First, Claire completed the procedure and received the crystal rod. She pointed the tip towards Pharos and the others and said, "These people are with me." The receptionist with glasses turned her gaze to Pharos and smiled, saying, "Hello."
"Then, please hold your hand over here."
Pharos followed Claire's example and placed one hand on the crystal plate on the counter. The lady at the reception desk stared at the back of the crystal panel, touched it with her hand, quickly operated it, and then asked, "Yes, that's fine. Do you need a test stick?" Not understanding the question, Pharos asked Claire for help. Then she said, "Oh, test stick is this?" and Claire tapped the crystal rod she was holding with her other hand. Then Claire told the receptionist, "The 4 of us will be traveling together, so this one test stick will be enough." The lady nodded and smiled at Pharos, saying, "Please enjoy your stay."
"What on earth is she doing?"
Pharos asked Claire, stepping aside after finishing the check-in. "It's an entry check. This library houses information not only on Earth, but also on many planets in the galaxy. And when you hold any part of your body over that crystal panel called Crustar, all of your information appears instantly. All of what planet you have been, who you have been, and so on, and they keep a record of who enters the library." After waiting for Elandra and Ramal to finish the procedures, Claire said come on and went around the reception counter. Behind the reception desk, Director Ramza was still gazing intently at the top of his desk. "Grandpa Ramza." When Claire called out, Ramza raised his head and looked around. When he turned around and recognized Claire, his eyes widened and then broke into a smile. His wing-like eyebrows flapped in time with the movement of his face.
"Oh, Claire, You're here again? Oh, who are they?
Ramza stood up and looked at Feroz and Elandra standing next to Claire, furrowing his brow as if searching his memory. These are Feroz and Elandra, they are my friends. Claire introduced the two.
Such a beautiful couple. My name is Ramza, and I am the director of this library. Is this your first time here?
Feroz replied that it was his first time, but Ramza, not seeming to have heard anything, raised his chin and looked at Feroz from under his long eyebrows.
Maybe you're from the surface world?
That's right. You know that? Claire answered before Feroz could reply. I knew it right away, too. Feroz looks like an underground person, doesn't it? But I thought he had a slightly different atmosphere. Claire said proudly, looking up at Feroz's face. This Grandpa Ramza was originally from Surface World, too.
Ho ho ho. But that was a long time ago,
said Ramza, closing his right eye. Then he looked closely into Feroz's face.
By the way, there was a time when someone who looked a lot like you used to come here often. What was his name? I can't remember, but he said he also came from the surface world.
Could that be Feroz's father? Claire looked up at Feroz.
Perhaps so. Wasn't the man's name Lucius?
Ramza bowed his head and nodded a couple of times.
That might have been the name. We can find out if we look into it.
Then, please try, Claire asked. Then Ramza replied, I'm not allowed to tell you actually, but returned to the seat he had been sitting in earlier. Ramza poked the desk with the tip of the test stick he was holding, looked at the information displayed on it, and then stood up again.
Feroz, I believe the man I was referring to was your father,
said Ramza, as soon as he returned.
Really? What on earth was my father doing here?
I can't tell you that much,
Ramza said, lowering his eyes and shaking his head. Why, come on, cheapskate, Claire said accusingly.
It is a rule that I am not allowed to say such things.
But it's about his father, so you should tell us that much. Because we can find it out in Margamore anyway, can't we?
Of course, that's possible, but I can't tell you. If you're really curious, you can go and have a look by yourselves.
Okay, Claire said, her lips pouting and sulking. But there is still information remaining about Feroz's father, so I think we'll find out if we go and see it. Actually, that's not why we came to the library this time. Claire then told Ramza about Feroz's purpose in coming to the underworld, and how the information about his mother had disappeared. So, Claire said after she'd finished speaking, I was wondering if there was any way we could take a look at the information that was deleted, so we came here to ask you. Ramza groaned and crossed his arms.
If all of her personal information has been erased, then that must be something serious. Even if it's the person in question. Permission from the central office is needed to erase all of one's information. If it was deleted at the discretion of the central office and not at the person's request, then there must be some serious inconvenience in keeping his mother's information.
What exactly is a serious inconvenience?
After staring at the face of Feroz, who asked the question, Ramza answered.
I hate to say this to you, but there are some other cases in which personal information has been deleted. Most of them seem to have committed grave crimes that disrupted the order of this underground world. Also, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard before that when someone receives special orders from the central government or some other organization, in order to carry out their mission, they sometimes delete a person's information to protect them from dangerous elements.
By dangerous elements, do you mean dark forces? Claire asked, leaning forward over the counter.
Well, that's how it is. However, that's just a rumor I heard, so I don't know if it's true or not.
Claire leaned her torso on the counter and said, swinging her legs.
By the way, what kind of grave sin would disrupt the order of this world?
Ramza awkwardly scratched his head in response to Feros' question.
For example, yes, primarily, it would be something like siding with the dark forces, plotting to take over the Earth, and actually acting as one of them. However, it hasn't been determined yet that your mother did that and deleted the information, so you should not worry too much about it.
I'm sure that your mother had some reason for asking the central office to delete the information by herself, Claire said to Feros comfortingly. Anyway, in order to confirm this, we want to go and look at the deleted information about Feros' mother. Is there any way to do that?
That being said, once information has been deleted, not even people in the central office can see it. First of all, now that it's been deleted, we don't even know who his mother is. There's no way to find out what information it is.
What? Then, what should we do? Claire said sulking, pounding the counter with the fist that was holding the test stick.
Well, it may be disappointing, but there's no need to give up,
Ramza said apologetically, turning his gaze to Feros. Then, Feros shook his head.
No, I don't need to look up my mother. I don't remember her in the first place. I was just curious as to why the information was deleted, and I thought it would be nice to find out something about what kind of person she was. More importantly, I'd like to know if Emilu is sick is really the result of a curse. Is it possible to find out?
That's easy. We just need to go and look up the related information on Surface World. Claire interrupted, even though the question was meant for Ramza. Who should we go and look for information on? The king? Or Altacia? Maybe we should look for information on both Ibiza and Altacia? Said Elandra, who had been listening in silence. If we go and look at the information on the two of them on the Surface World, we'll understand their intentions, and we might even find out if one of them is involved with the dark forces. Altacia actually exists on the Surface World as a prophet, so it's unlikely that the information on the Surface World has been deleted. Yes, that's true. If that's the case, let's go and have a look right away. Claire turned around and left the counter, and Ramza called out, "Wait a moment.
Don't you need to check which room those crust stones are located?"
No, we'll check them by ourselves. Thank you, Grandpa Ramza. See you later. Saying that, Claire waved her test stick and quickly moved towards the pillar in the back. Feros thanked Ramza and followed Claire.
So what exactly is a cruststone?
Feros asked Ramal as he followed Claire.
They're little crystal tablets. Each one contains information about each person.
Ramal replied, forming a small square with his thumbs and index fingers. With this deminder, let's go to the observatory room first, Claire said, pointing with her test stick to a pillar in the back. When they stood in front of the pillar called deminder, a large opening appeared in the wall. There was no one inside. There is enough space for about 20 adults to comfortably fit in. Once the four of them had entered, the entrance was silently closed. At the same time, the ceiling glowed blue, illuminating the inside of the pillar. And soon after, an exit appeared in the wall. It didn't seem like they had moved at all, but the space that spread out before them was dimly lit. And Feros realized that it was a room that was clearly different from the reception floor he had been on earlier. Once everyone was outside, the entrance to the deminder was closed and the room they landed in was plunged into complete darkness. Then, a starry sky spread all around. Feros looked up, down, left and right. He could see countless stars scattered everywhere. And huge swirling nebulae in blue, white and rainbow colors were scattered here and there. Feros gradually lost his sense of balance and could no longer tell whether he was standing or floating in the air. Claire led him by the hand and moved forward as if moving through water. Then, with Claire's help, Feros sat down on a comfortable seat in front of the big white nebula. "Look, that's the galaxy we live in," Claire said, sitting next to Feros and pointing with the test stick at the nebula ahead.
The galaxy?
Yes, it's a single celestial body made up of hundreds of millions of suns and countless planets that revolve around them.
Hundreds of millions of suns? Is there more than one sun?
Of course not, you really don't know anything. There are an infinite number of suns in the universe. Well, I mean suns, or rather stars just like the sun. Just in our galaxy alone, there are hundreds of billions, even trillions of stars. And you can see that there are galaxies just like ours here and there, right? Each of them has hundreds of billions of stars, and around each of those stars there are planets that have life on them, just like Earth. So there are an infinite number of planets inhabited by life in the universe. And not only that, new planets are constantly being born in the universe. At the same time, it seems like there are a lot of planets that disappear, too.
It's endless.
Yeah, it's endless. Facing the countless stars and galaxies scattered about, Pharos was made to realize just how insignificant he really was.
Even if the Earth we live on were to disappear, it would have absolutely no effect on universe, even if one tiny star in the universe were to disappear. Moreover, my existence is virtually non-existent.
But if you don't exist, this universe wouldn't exist. You are a part of this vast universe, and even if you die, you will never cease to exist. If your existence itself were to cease, it would be the same as the universe ceasing to exist. That's what my teacher told me at school, when I was thinking the same thing as yours. Though it seems that everyone who comes here is hit with that same feeling of emptiness at some point. At first I didn't really understand what the teacher meant, but now I understand it very well. So, even if you don't understand now, I'm sure you'll understand it soon.
Claire said, holding Pharos' hand.
Claire, you're still a child, but you seem to know a lot.
Of course, even though I look like this, in terms of earthly years, I've lived a lot longer than you. Besides, I don't just go to school, I always come to this library to study.
Wait a minute, you've lived longer than me?
Yes, that's right.
Considering that, you seem quite childish.
Well, I am still a child,
Claire said, shaking her clasped hand up and down.
Well, let's go find Ibiza and Altatia's crustone.
Claire let go of her hand, pointed the tip of the testicle towards the galaxy, and began muttering some kind of spell. Then, the seat they were sitting on started hurtling towards the galaxy with incredible force. A huge nebula that covered the entire field of vision approached rapidly before his eyes, and Pharos' fists naturally clenched. They entered the galaxy and shot through the countless giant planets like a comet. After moving at a ferocious pace for a while, the speed gradually slowed down. Ahead, there was a sun burning like a flame. There are several planets aligned in that line.
That's our solar system,
Claire said, in front of those planets.
So, you know the blue planet that's the third from the sun? That's the Earth we live on now.
Indeed, there is a blue planet that shines third from the sun.
The world we live in is called Earth. It is round like the moon, and shines blue.
Seeing Earth for the first time, Pharos remembered his father's words as he had looked up at the moon in the night sky with his father.
Perhaps my father had also been here and seen the Earth in this way.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Claire said as Pharos gazed upon the Earth for a while.
Well then, let's go check on Ibiza and Altatia's crustone.
Claire muttered something again, and said the names of Ibiza and Altatia, and then she waved the testicle. Then, of the several planets that were aligned with the sun, only the Earth was brought into close-up. As it got closer and closer, obscuring the entire view, the sheet carrying them began to hurtle towards Earth. As they got closer, the Earth, which was supposed to be spherical, suddenly became to a flat surface, and a huge mountain covered with snow loomed before their eyes.
We are gonna crash.
Pharos instinctively closed his eyes, but it didn't hit the ground. It quickly went underground and then barreled through the dark tunnel ahead without slowing down. In the blink of an eye, they emerged from the tunnel and the shining white city of the Tios appeared below them. The speed of the sheet gradually slowed down,
and it slowly approached directly above the rows of libraries that stood like a pin mountain. Then, it stopped at a certain point, passed through the glass ceiling, and landed on the top of one of the towers.